All right. Yes, springtime is here. It's getting warm, and episode 3 has arrived. Welcome to the weekly review with Nick. Today we have an exciting topic. I have been wanting to do this one for a while now, and it's finally here. So, you're wondering, what is the topic? Aliens and demons, my friends. Yes, we are going to get into this one. Please don't run away. Some of you are already like, whoa! This is going to be good. I have personal experience with this one. A little story I'm going to throw into the mix. And so stay tuned. And we're going to break some of this down, discuss it, talk about it. So let's get into that clip. Now, for a little context, this has been a massive subject with spiked curiosity from the public over the last couple years. Prominent podcasters like Joe Rogan have featured guests that have talked about UFO sightings, demons, the occult, things like that. Even in the last 2 weeks, there was a viral clip from previous President Obama and President Trump talking about UFOs and stuff. So this stuff is very relevant, very hot topic. People are very intrigued and fascinated. Now, here's a little clip with a priest that has the title of exorcist priest. That's something, right? He's going to break down some nuances between demons and aliens that I think connect them way more than people realize. So let's roll the clip and we'll break it down.
Usually when you get into stuff like the abduction cases and things like that, I actually did a conference on this more recently, where I parse out 10 different ways in which if you actually look at like abduction scenarios, that in point in fact, those abduction scenarios, if you actually look at what the aliens are supposedly doing, is identical to the same things that demons do to people who are possessed. So if you strip the veneer of the alien aspect of it off, that in point in fact what you're dealing with is they're just demons.
Man, that's an interesting comment. Very interesting. So if you read the Gospels like Matthew, Mark, Luke, you'll have accounts of demons that possess people, essentially enter into people's bodies, make them do horrible, terrible things themselves, take control of them essentially. And so what we see with modern accounts, obviously this is not true of every single account that people say of aliens, but it's very common that there is parallel drawn from these, that the aliens as well do things and do experiments on people, enter into them, take control, mind control stuff. It's fascinating, and definitely some parallel there we could draw out.
There's actually a book too, I don't know if you've heard about it, it's called Alien Intrusion by Gary Bates. And in that book, he debunks a lot of the sightings that people have actually, the footage and the things of that sort. It's a bit dated of a book, but in there he talks about the fact that too, that people who are in these abduction situations will actually cry out to Jesus, and then then boom, all of a sudden the abduction situation stops and they're sitting back in their bed or whatever the case actually is. So there's a lot of demonic stuff on that level. There's some that speculate too that some of the craft that we see moving in ways that are contrary to physical laws is also just a diabolic mirage, which they can cause. It's that type of stuff is extraordinarily rare because God doesn't usually permit it, but that can actually happen. So that's kind of just my general thoughts in relationship to it, that a lot of this stuff, not all of it, but a lot of this stuff is just diabolic in nature.
It's really interesting because we shouldn't assume every single sighting and story and all footage out there is aliens, demons, or has some relation to that. But I do think there is credence to certain ones, and we should really consider them. Certain people within the Navy and Air Force have had sightings, which is interesting. Skinwalker Ranch is a really big one where there's been some interesting sightings and telling stories of that. There's many others, and we're going to get into some of that down the road, but basically, I think I think that there probably are times that some of these things people are citing and drawing the conclusion that they're UFOs probably lines more with like demonic supernatural activity.
Well, there's kind of a bit of a backstory. So one of the tactics that the demons always use is, and very often use, is they rarely do a frontal assault on a particular individual. What they'll do is, and this is a diversionary tactic, which being a military man, you would be able to appreciate this. You're over here, you just lob bombs over here, so the people's focus goes over here. And what that does is that gives you the ability to maintain your activity over here and maintain your influence. So the demons will very often, so for example, one of the things that we commonly see is it's a demon of fear that actually drives things like sins against the sixth commandment, pornography, and things of that sort. So he'll drive the person to do that. But the real root problem is a demon of fear. So once you address the demon of fear, then this stuff just clears out. Well, this same type of tactic is actually going on. They want you to not pay attention to what's really going on or what's really in the background, because that's where their vulnerability is.
The devil, Satan, demons, the wicked presence and entities in this world, they're just deceivers and liars by nature. Let's look at a couple of verses, like for example, John 8:44. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. 2 Corinthians 11:14. For even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. You're probably very familiar with that one. And Revelation 20:10. The devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur. So there's many more, but it just captures this reality that it's all deception, lies, and manipulation. Now let's talk about my experience with this. Back in 2010, it was the FIFA World Cup in South Africa. I was living there with another guy for a couple of months. We were there on short-term mission work, which was through a bigger church organization. We were doing things with local churches there and working with like kids and teaching them things, as well as helping the pastors and the staff on those small churches. So basically, there was one night where we went out to this woman's house who had been allowing this particular church to gather, and they always have a couple of songs they sing before the pastor brings some kind of Bible passage that he'll talk on. There was a guy who was my age at the time. It was like in my early 20s, and he had been involved in witchcraft and some very nasty, evil things, spiritual rituals and things like that. So we knew this through the people, and when this woman began to lead the worship, the guy sort of came at her and went to attack her, and he was in this sort of trance, and things happened so fast it's hard to recall every detail, but he went for her, and his voice was a little graspy. It was not the guy that we had kind of been getting to know. It was an entirely different person in that moment. She said, "In Jesus' name." The guy then totally falls back on his back. And I'll never forget that. The pastor went to start praying over him, and that has stuck with me, where it became more real in that time and has only become more real over time up to this point, that the spiritual realm, the evils, the presence, the entities that exist are real. They're deceiving, they are manipulating, they are causing all kinds of terrible things in people's lives. It's a real thing, and we need to stay vigilant, and we need to continue to stay awakened to this reality, but never forget that God is so much bigger than any of these evil entities and spiritual beings in this world and what they're up to. Good and his good will always triumph over this evil that does exist and gets away at times, but his goodness will absolutely triumph at the end of the day and when all things consummate in his plan. Continue to put your trust in him and don't fear these things, but be aware that these things are real and they exist. So you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Be on the lookout for more and more. I'm excited. I want to keep this momentum going. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're enjoying this so far, you're going to only get more, and I'm going to continue to grow and develop and get better at this. So I hope you're enjoying it. And until next times, God bless. Take care.